Everyone, today I would like to share with you the messages from the Buddhists who practice to get the real peace in their way. In different schools of Buddhism, they share the knowledge about how to find the real peace in the way of practice in different sects or different school in Buddhism, from Zen school, Mahayana school, and Vajrayana school, and also Theravada school. So, in the occasion of the Global Conference for Buddhism in the University of California, Berkeley campus, San Francisco. So please enjoy the message from some part of the discussion.
Is the blending of them, because they help me to understand different things at different times, different situations, different applications, and certainly different people. I want to know, what are we talking about?
Buddha, you can't go wrong. First question, what brought you into full-time commitment? Second question, what were the challenges? Bring it into the 21st century.
I came, when I run into my Christian friends, they ask me, when did I leave God, and when did I leave Christianity? I'm like, I never left. I'm still on the path. I don't care whether you call it an anity, or ism, or is. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just on the path, the way leading upward. And so in different times, it takes us into different, there are different things that we aspire to know. You can't answer a question that hasn't been answered. But I was asking questions. So the answers availed themselves to me. The answers came. And part of those answers required that I step outside of what I already knew. It wasn't that I rejected, but I felt there must be more. And what I already knew, and I had to open myself to what I didn't know, what I considered foreign, what I was told not to look at. But if I looked at everything available to me and I still felt something was lacking, where do you go? You go to what you don't know. So I went there. So right away somebody introduced me. I mean, just as soon as the thought, there's the action coming at you. Somebody comes down the street and offers me a Buddhist book. But actually, this was my first book, and it was a book on dependent origination. It had the wheel of life with the monster holding the teeth, and all the animals on the wheel. I put up a sign and a cross. I didn't want to see that. And it took 18 years for the Dharma to come back around to me. So even when the Dharma was calling me, I was not ready for it. But 18 years later, after I'd gone through everything, gone through unity, gone through you, gone to Taoism was the last one that I was in, and I loved it so much, and I was asking my great master questions, and he finally looked at me and said, Buddhism is for you. I said, no, I'm not that, I'm not interested in that. He said, no, Buddhism is for you. And basically, he was kicking me out. He was sending me to kindergarten. He was sending me to the great teacher. And I'm so grateful for that, because intellectually I could get a lot of this and I could spit it right back out, but I didn't really understand it. But he sent me to the Buddha, and the Dharma. The Dharma started, I was Pentecostal all night, all right, so you do have to. So the Dharma began to break it down for me in a way that I could really understand it. Giving a baby milk is good, but you try to give them meat, you'll kill them. And so I started with this milk and gradually moved on to pablum and gradually moved on until I can eat meat. I mean, you know what I mean? I can digest it. I don't know if I really do, but I can digest. And so this is what brought me. I never left the path. From the beginning of my life, I've always had a vision and a view for something, and I didn't know what it was. But the Dharma has brought me to what I know is the path of completion. The only challenge I had was mostly with the man-woman thing. But I'd gone through that in Christianity. You don't have to keep repeating the same lessons. And so I understood what needed to be understood with that. And I just moved forward in my understanding with a lot of respect, because there were times that I had a different view about things. We can change. And so I just let them be however they want to be, and I just continue to be as I am. And now they're catching up. I think that's so wonderful. And I'd like to, in my last 30 seconds, I'd like to say I'd like to see our Buddhist sects go in that same direction. Some of the things that we need to know instructions on what to do and what not to do. On others, we need to imagine ourselves living in our highest and best qualities of being. Can we do that? So some of us study Dharma. Some of these practices, actually we don't study Dharma. We are the Dharma. And so when you bring these together, I think we can come a whole and complete, lacking in no good thing.
Can I hear a hallelujah? Can you give me a Bodhisvaha? Bodhisvaha! Hallelujah! Bodhisvaha! I'd like to introduce Venerable Chen Hu to my right. Venerable Chen Hu originated with a PhD in physics, computer science, AI. Christian, you too, you and Ajahn Brahm need to talk. So, Great Master Weijue of Zhongtai Monastery in Taiwan shaved his head and taught him the Dharma. He immersed himself deeply in the study and practice of Buddhism. In October of the year 2000, Venerable Chen Hu and 4 other bhikshus came to California to Lafayette to establish Buddha Gate Monastery. I think some of you know about Buddha Gate Monastery. He was the first abbot of the monastery. And then he went on to establish the Sunnyvale Zen Center, which is one of Silicon Valley's premier places to learn how to meditate and to learn to study the sutras. They have, in the few years they've been there, really done a job of bringing proper Dharma to Silicon Valley. He's educated in Western science, but has a deep affection for classical Chinese culture and is uniquely suited to bridging.
I was 14 when I came to this country, and I was educated here. When I graduated from college and had a full-time job in the high-tech industry, it was good pay, and the job was easy for me. And however, very quickly I started wondering what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of making money? Why are we here? And all kinds of mysteries of life that I couldn't figure out, that really confused me. So in my search, I first turned to Western religion, and that led me to Western philosophy, and that led me to Eastern philosophy, and that led me to Buddhism. And that's in Buddhism that I found that, different from my previous experiences, this seemed like something real. Somebody's been there, know what they're talking about, and it's an actual experience of those who have gone there and figured it out. And so the more I immerse myself in the Buddhist teaching, the more I'm convinced that it's true. And so it took me 8 years actually later when I actually finished my PhD, that I know that I will be a Buddhist for the rest of my life. But then in Chinese Buddhism, there's a prevalent belief that this is the Dharma ending age and nobody can get enlightened these days. The only thing you can do is to chant Buddha's name and hope to be born in the Pure Land and practice next life. So I didn't like that, even though it's a great method, but it doesn't resonate with me. So until I met my Shifu, Grandmaster Weijue, who I think is one of the greatest Chinese Zen masters of the last century, he convinced us that enlightenment is possible. And he explained why in ways that we can understand. He's very profound, very large, very rational, and he lived his life that way. I never met anybody who is so calm, who can do so much, who can face all the challenges, always mindful. And so this is something real for me, and so I was convinced and decided a few days after I got my PhD to return to Taiwan to become ordained. And then so in the year 2000 I started teaching the Dharma here. Now, as to the question of what challenges we face, I think I'm really blessed as Reverend Hensher, who is familiar in the Asian and Chinese Buddhist history and culture. So I want to just go through a few topics that I actually did a survey of this. When Buddhism went from India to China, it stayed there for 2,000 years, still vibrant, and how did it happen? How did it take root, and how did it flourish in China? And I think that can give us a lot of insight about how Buddhism can take root in the West and flourish. So I want to talk about it from three aspects: from the essence, from the form, and from the function. 体相用, the essence, meaning that what must be preserved, what cannot change, regardless of culture, language, and region. And one of the most important things, of course, is the translation of the scriptures, and that must be accurate and beautiful, as Buddha taught it. And it took the Chinese 500 years to get it right, and they did, over 1,000 years of translation. So from my experience, the Western translations of scriptures are getting better all the time, but still there's a lot of room for improvement. And even though there are a lot of scriptures translated, in reality, probably only 5% of the whole Buddhist canon has seen Western language. But they are the most popular 5% probably, but they are still vast knowledge, vast teaching that most people have never heard of. So this probably will go on for another 100 years. And also, most of the translators, famous Chinese translators of Buddhism into Chinese, are monks who practice, who live their life, who may have been enlightened as well. But most of the translators into the West are scholars, so that's quite different. So this is something we need to think about. Also, a second topic is the building of the Sangha, the monastic Sangha. The three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. So Sangha, traditionally, Indian Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, means the monastic community. And it's because when the lay person have to take care of a family and worry about a job and children, they can do a real good job, but it's really, really difficult. But the monastics devoted their life to preserve, study, practice, and perhaps propagate the Dharma. So the three pillars must be established. That is not so much in the consciousness of Western Buddhists yet. 2 minutes, okay. And so another is the comprehensive study of the Buddhist scriptures. And the fourth one is enlightenment. There must be awakened Buddhist teachers, every generation, to preserve the true Dharma teaching. And you could, as some aspect, awaken to the same thing that the Buddha has seen. And in terms of form, I just read through the topics. We don't have time. One is the rituals, the services. They are important too for collective practice. And so we shouldn't dispense it. But how can we do it in Western languages in a way? Hensher Fashi has done a great deal, and others have done it, but it's still more to be done. Ordination, proper ordination is still very difficult for Westerners. The good and deep, in-depth instruction and practice of meditation. After mindfulness, I wasn't aware that mindfulness was already done with that. So there's still so much principle theory and direct experiential knowledge of Dharma, of samadhi, of meditation that is still not well known yet to most people. How can the Buddhist temples in the West be self-sustainable like the churches? In terms of function, Buddhist art, what would an American Buddhist statue look like? What would an American Buddhist temple, or what the European Buddhist temple look like? That's fascinating to think about. Government regulations for religious institutions are mostly modeled after churches, not too applicable to Buddhist, how the Buddhist temple function. And then interfaith. Buddhism has been very, just beginning to be represented in interfaith talk, and we have done quite a bit of that, but not enough. How do we teach Buddhism to the younger generation? And I think Taiwan has, where I'm from, has done a great deal, and we can look into that.
That was the Chinese Buddhism. So you know that how he came to Buddhism and practice and find the way of peace in his path. Okay, now we turn to Vajrayana school or Lama tradition. As you know, the Dalai Lama, the Vajrayana tradition, they practice in Tibet or Ladakh or Bhutan, Nepal or Himalayan range countries. Now I would like to introduce you to listen from the lay practitioners from Tibetan family.
That's the greeting that we would usually say in Tibet. I feel very pressured after hearing all the talks, and then I'm the youngest in flesh. I reincarnated much later. So I think what I'm going to share is more of representing the younger generation, and what Fashu is talking about is a grand system and sustainability of how Buddhism can grow in the West. Because I grew up in a Buddhist family, and that wasn't my choice. And Buddhism has developed itself in Tibet since 8th century, pretty strong. So I get to see and witness, experience Buddhist practices since I was 4 or 5 years old. Then when I did see the difference, is that when I went through, because I grew up in Tibetan region and it's inside China, and I went to communist schools. Then I had to go through all kinds of modern education, the education of criticism, yeah, and the education of doubt, so that you have to question everything, which is very good, and I enjoyed it. But then that also led me as a teen questioning my parents' faith, and then I didn't have the I didn't get enough reasons, because I'm trained to get reasons to believe in something, and then I didn't get enough reasons to believe in the belief that my grandparents had. But then I came across Tibetan medicine, which was a very down-to-earth system, talks about how to heal the body. And then healing the body, it involves the mind, it involves the energy. So talking about Tibetan Buddhism, I cannot represent Tibetan Buddhism. I'm too tiny for that. But we call Tibetan Buddhism Vajrayana, so Vajrayana can be understood as a tradition that builds harmony in between lay practitioners and the monastics. So that's where I found my place, because I wasn't living my life as a total lay, that I do not have any spirituality, but then I'm not a monastic, I'm not a nun. Then it was a kind of an awkward place, and I didn't know which box I belonged to. But then when the tradition of yogis and yoginis in Tibet, we also call them ngakpa and ngakma. Ngak means mantra, so ngakpa and ngakma can be translated as mantra reciters. So they actually work through their energy. And energy here I refer to breathing techniques and mantras, speech practices. And they work through the speech to balance body and mind. You know that 60% of the diseases nowadays are psychosomatic. So, if the energy is imbalanced, then the energy is going to attack the mind, and the mind is going to attack our body, so we're sick and unhappy. So, coming back to that, it's the key point of Vajrayana is transformation. So I really enjoyed the earlier talk saying that the traditions, the sects, should actually communicate more. And the communication, the efficient communication is through a well-trained skill of transformation, so that we are able to transform we're able to transform our discursive thoughts through seeing its nature, so that we do not stick or stuck with any of the appearances or like.
How to deal with the vicissitudes of life and so forth. But if you come in and you're really a student of the Dharma, then I take you into the Theravada hall. It's got big Buddha, and if you are not so predisposed to being quiet all the time and that sort of thing, I take you to the Vajrayana hall. And the Vajrayana hall's got bells and whistles and lights and it's got everything in it. But I took a Tibetan friend, Lama there one day. When he walked in, he got scared and he ran out. And I said, what's wrong? He said, that Buddha on the main altar. Well, it wasn't a Tibetan Buddha. It was an American Buddha on the altar. And you can imagine what kind of American Buddha, right? So it was African American Buddha on the altar. And so I was like, what was I trying to do? Make the image look like you? And so what I'm reading is the notion that all of this is cultural baggage, because I really don't think that it's cultural baggage. I think that all of these things are important, but we can change the imagery. We can, change the ways that we talk about things. So what I'm leaving behind is the notion that this is only Tibetan, or that's only Chinese, or that's only for Sri Lanka, and this is for Americans. And so just dropping that all and bringing all the different aspects onto the path is what I'm taking up, and that's what I'm dropping on.
So, Venerable Jianhu talked a lot about translation, so let me phrase the question. What about the Chinese Mahayana that you were trained in does not translate currently to Silicon Valley in the 21st century?
I think a lot of the ritual aspects, a lot of people turn to Buddhism because they didn't like the rituals in Western religion. So they are kind of against it, thinking that Zen Buddhism, Chan, has none of that, but actually we do. We have a lot of this. And I was against that too, actually, when I came to Buddhism, until my master told me, explained the meaning behind the chanting, the meaning behind the praise, the meaning behind the ritual. So I think when we have the ritual without understanding the meaning and how it helps you practice, then that's kind of pointless. But when you do understand, it can be another way, a skillful means to help people practice together. You've probably seen images of these in Chinese monasteries in China, of people who are like a huge batch of incense, just making a lot of pollution. That can probably be left behind. There are certain cultural, very Chinese cultural aspects. I don't think I need to go into details because it doesn't really relate to people here. But I think it's also important to find American culture or Western culture that can integrate well with Buddhist practices.
So, if I were going to ask you the question, you're thoroughly steeped in the tradition of yogis, mantras, and healing, but you live in the West. So when you're trying to explain to Westerners, what doesn't communicate that you would like to change, perhaps?
My experience of living in the West is still pretty short, only about 5 years in Europe and traveling around the world. What I see is that people do not have enough trust in themselves. They don't feel comfortable with themselves. And even if you tell them that they're so good, they're just perfectly imperfect. Because we're all imperfect in a sense, but we're perfectly imperfect. And I think people with a lot of love around them try to tell that and try to let them understand, but they could not, like a lot of people in the West, I see that they cannot accept who they are internally. And they try to all be good. And I think that's kind of really tiring. Being a bad person sometimes can take more sacrifices and can actually bring a lot of goodness, but I mean bad in a sense, in a special way of bad, yeah. That's hard to communicate with people in the West.
Since you got the microphone, could I ask you to say just a word about your work with introducing the West to filiality and the sense of connection to parents, particularly to the mother and women? I know she has a YouTube video that speaks to that and very moving. Maybe just give us a little bit of how important that is.
Mm-hmm. So we believe that in the system of reincarnation, we have once been each other's mothers. So if we do remember the kind of unconditional love we received from our mothers, then that would really just melt all the ice in between. And I understand that a lot of discursive thoughts have penetrated into our modern culture, not only in the West nowadays. I see that in the East, where Xiaodao is, where the affiliation is so strongly rooted, is also being questioned. A lot of Asian families are having problems in terms of the relationship between parents and children. But then in the West, it's really absent. There is really not enough understanding and love in between kids and parents. So in most of my talks, I'm emphasizing on the impermanent life or the precious human life that is being given to us by our parents, and that's the most important and the beginning of our life. And anything we enjoy in our life, we should give thanks to our parents because they gave us this unconditional, blissful life.
We can think for ourselves. We can discover something for ourselves. We can be, it was a dark period, dark ages. We can be now in the light. So that's a good idea. I like that idea. And so I think that idea actually pervades the reception of Buddhism in the West, that we think of it that way. We think of it as not being about doctrine. If the teachings are valuable, and I think we would all agree that they are, it's because we confirm them in our lives, in our own experiences. Anyway, in advance, Nikki sent out a bunch of questions, and I dutifully wrote answers to them, so I will now read you the answer. What does awakening mean to you? That was the question, right? Here's the answer.
Go for it, Norman.
Yeah. It means practice. Unswerving devotion to practice for the benefit of others. It means fearless unselfishness. That's my answer.
Thank you. I also appreciate.
So we have learned a lot about the idea from the Western who practice Buddhism. Now I would like you to hear from the scholar, Dr. Richard Dixie from the Dhamma College in Berkeley, San Francisco.
This really comes back, I think, to the heart of what Buddhism is. Because I think at the heart, Buddhism is a real direct inquiry about experience and about what it means to have experience. We've talked a lot about peripheral items today. I think now we're going to talk about the real essence of what Buddhism is about. And the vana we're caught in is something we don't expect. That's why we can't see it. If we could see it, we'd break it, we'd get free, but we don't. For example, put your hands up if you think you're here now. You see, you're not. You're in a memory of now. It takes about 400 milliseconds to generate. We have it in our language, we call it recognition. Recognition. Oh, there it is in the language. And we're living about 400 milliseconds behind events. Always. All the time. In fact, our awareness is refreshing between 8 and 12 times a second. So if you just think about that, that means that 8 to 12 times a second, a display is generated for us based upon actual events, but actually recognized. And within that gap is a prism. Now, when you look at the numbers, it's really rather alarming. If you think, okay, 12 hours a day, 12 times a second, 60 minutes in the hour, 60 seconds, 60 minutes in the hour and 60 seconds in the minute. It comes up to about 500,000 cognitive events per day, per sense gate. We've got 6 sense gates. That means it's 3 million prison events happening every day for our entire life. And not surprising, our attempts to be mindful successfully, which might number in the 10s, maybe 20s, perhaps even 100s, are overwhelmed by the reality we're in. And it's my belief that that is what the Buddha was addressing. He was addressing the cognitive prison we call the here and now. And so the joke is when people say, remember, be here now, they're actually repeating the mantra of the prison they're in, not the freedom from it. And it's understanding that that is the essence of the path. I think it's probably the essence of all religions, actually. Really, it's the 400 milliseconds that's in front of our nose at all times. And really, the entirety of the spiritual path is to be found in those 400 milliseconds. All the associations, all the memories, all the doubts, all the pleasures, to use the Buddhist terms, all the things we want to get rid of, all the things we want, all our aspirations, all our fears, blah, it's all there in that little gap. And the question is, can we ever penetrate that gap? And I think the key is to recognize that yes, we can, when we understand there is a gap. And indeed, the Buddha's first words following the Enlightenment were, "O house builder, you have been seen. You will not build a house for me again." It's really, really striking, the statement that was made. So my view is that the vana that we need to become near of is this. And if we do so, we will find something completely beyond any linguistic structure. So there's no point in thinking about what it is. That's silly. We need to think about the prison that we're in, because that we can see, and not worry so much about what lies outside. So that's me.
Thank you, Richard. We'd love to come back to that later a little bit, but for now, I'm just going to go down the line for the first question, and then we'll mix it up. Gil, please.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that a lot because I get the sense that here and now is overemphasized. That it's kind of held up. Sometimes it's kind of like Buddhist God or something. They're all great and That's where everything good is supposed to be. I teach people to be so-called here and now, but I think that we have to be careful not to overrate it. And I think this word nibbana or nirvana points to something that's more valuable, more important than the here and now. And I myself prefer to think of it as an action noun. It's not a thing or place or reality, but rather it involves an action, and it's an action of release. And that's my favorite way of rendering the word nibbana as release. And it's a profound form of letting go of the prison that we're in, the attachments we have. And that the practice that I've gone through has been a progressive series of letting go of releases. And I think that when qualifies as something maybe like enlightenment, I'm not sure what it is, but that when that release is so strong and so palpable, that it gives us a first-hand experience of a different way of living, a different way of being, one that's not self-centered, one that sees the possibility of dwelling without attachments, without greed, and without hate. And that experience, maybe those things still live in a person, but the experience of being freed from those are so strong that it becomes a palpable reference point that begins working us and changing us and helping us move further into the possibility of release. And I think that our whole system is set up, our psychophysical system, if you tune in well, or if you sit and get really quiet, it's set up to want us to move towards that release. Because not to move in that direction is to stay separate.
But if you, when you're talking, look at yourself as you're talking, you realize that's actually true. We are not doing what we think we are doing. We're totally different from what we think we are. So the display that we live in has a displayed actor in it, which you remember as me. But we have a faculty, and this is where possibility arises. We have a faculty to see, and if we look, we see there is no actor. Something else is going on. The words are coming out now, for example, but Richard Dixie isn't saying them, not at all. And this is true for all of us. It's really straight in front of our faces. Now, whatever that is can be relied on. You find yourself relying on something you don't identify. It's really quite remarkable. It's a true refuge. All the refuges that you can identify aren't going to let you down. I can tell you that now. Because they're just concepts. They are put together ideas. But this refuge, which you can't identify, is totally reliable. And you find yourself relying on a capacity that you don't identify, which turns out to be who you are. Now, this is a strange realization. Perhaps we are 400 milliseconds in front of who we actually are. And all we have to do is rely on who we are, and then something else happens. Now that reliance is the realization that one can talk about.
So wonderful. I appreciate the point you made. So I want to invite you to make it more personal now, given with this view and with this understanding, this perception of awakening, enlightenment, nibbana. How has that changed you? That understanding, how has that changed who you are, how you are in daily life with that? So this is the time that I like to take the turn to become a little more personal instead of being heady, what it might be.
When you land up with a quality that was described by one Tibetan Lama rather well as couldn't care lessness. You couldn't care less. Why couldn't you care less? Because you're relying on yourself, your real self, not the care self. Funnily enough, we turn out to be nice, compassionate, effective people when we stop trying to be nice, compassionate, and effective people. And you see that when there are earthquakes or disasters, where people get thrown out of their idea of who they are, and they do incredible things. And you read about it the whole time. The trouble is, an hour later, they put themselves back together again, and they're back in a little box again. So I think that would be one of the main characteristics. It's the couldn't care less.
What do you think about that, Norman?
Well, I will take up your invitation to be personal. Unfortunately, I don't think practice has improved me.
Couldn't care less.
It has made me far more aware of all the ways in which I should improve. It really, I can't say, I used to be this terrible person and now I'm a really wonderful person. I can't really say that. In a way, I think actually that everything we can say about all this stuff, to me, seems quite paradoxical. In the sense that I think I could say, and it would really be true, I haven't changed at all. Through 40-some years of practice, I think I could really say that it would be a true statement. I think I could also say I've changed a lot. However,
That's very zen of you.
yeah.
That's very zen of you.
Well, no, it's not zen, it's just a fact, it's just the truth. Now, the thing is that, so if I've changed a lot, what changed me? Well, probably everything. So I can't attribute the changes that have occurred in my life to my practice necessarily. It must have been a factor, right? But also I got older. That would have changed me anyway. You were always, all of us, changing anyway, right? We're changing anyway, and we hope we're all improving. Any intelligent person who would like to be decent, we hope is improving over a lifetime of just being alive. So I think it's quite paradoxical, but I think, as I said in the beginning, the main thing is that I am much more aware of all the ways in which my smallness manifests.
So in this occasion, we have learned a lot about the idea from the scholars, from the Dhamma practitioners, lay people, and monastics life. And now I would like to share with you the Theravada points of view, Ajahn Brahmavamso, who teaches meditation and how to live without fear and worry, and how to find the real happiness in the present life.
It's called Anonymous. Now, my mind is so happy with me whenever we see each other. Yay, great, let's chill out together, let's hang out together. No effort, we're all at peace. That's how we stop a wandering mind. So, it is now 7 o'clock, so I've got to wander off, and you've got to wander off. And time flies when you're having fun, and people don't want to go anywhere because I've respected you, cared for you, open the door of my heart to you, as you should open the door of your heart to the people sitting next to you, to life, to everything. May you be at peace. Right down so much. So anyone. Let's get it close. Sadhu is a traditional Theravada Buddhist word meaning awesome. Let's get everything drop. 1, 2, 3. Awesome! Awesome! Awesome!
understand about the concept of Buddhism, why we have so many different sects or different schools. It's like there are many different types of sugar: brown sugar, white sugar, granulated sugar, rock sugar, but it's all sugar and it is all sweet in taste. It is produced in different forms so that it can be used in different ways. Buddhism is the same. There is Theravada Buddhism, there is the Zen Buddhism, Pure Land Buddhism, Yogacara Buddhism, and Vajrayana Buddhism. But they are all Buddhist and all has the same taste. The state of freedom. Buddhism has evolved in different forms so that it can be relevant to the different cultures in which it exists. It has been reinterpreted over the centuries so that it can remain relevant to its new generation. Outwardly, the types of Buddhism may seem very different, but at the center of all the teachings, the teaching of the Buddha are the same, such as the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path. All major religions, Buddhism included, have split into schools. The sects is different because of the culture, because of the region, because of the languages. But the different sects of Buddhism have never gone to war with each other. They have never been towards to each other, and until now, today, we have main school, Theravada and Mahayana and Vajrayana. They go to each other's temples, we chant together, worship together, such as tolerance and understanding are certainly rare. So I hope that you get the benefit and enjoy the talk from different practices in Buddhist tradition. But we are Buddhists. We bring peace, happiness to the world, and you can find peace and happiness within yourselves. Thank you very much for watching.